Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shamir Sachdev, and some of fintech's hardest hitting marketers and leaders.
Thank you very much all for joining us today, braving the weather, coming out, and making the effort to be here. Obviously trains were been impacted, and making our way through the snow and the rain and all of that sort of stuff. And genuine appreciation from the whole Growth Gorilla team and all the guests here. So I think best place to start really is at the beginning. So I'd like to welcome you all to FML Live, live recording of our podcast, the Fintech Marketing and Leaders podcast, and some quick introductions. Stephen Carroll from TikTok, Alex Velev, marketing consultant, and Julia, our head of influencer marketing. So I'm going to give a 30-second intro, 60-second intro about Growth Gorilla. We're a growth agency that helps well-funded fintechs. We help them with their growth, their go-to-market strategy, and then also market entry and product launches. In terms of sort of services that we provide, we obviously have lots of strings to our bow, but most recently we've added influencer marketing. And one of the reasons for that is that we've spoken to our clients and we realised that in the influencer marketing space, fintechs aren't really being looked after that much. A lot of the other agencies don't understand the nuances. It's not like fashion, it's not like FMCG, it's completely different. There's considerations around regulation, the fact that you're selling a product and not a platform. And so Julia's joined us, and today's kind of like the unofficial launch of our influencer services. There you go, it's probably staying on script, isn't it? You can make sure you edit that little gaff out. You go on a minute, got to be my right now as well on top of it. So with that in mind, we are here to, I've totally forgotten it, help maximise the impact of influencer marketing for fintechs. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Stephen, allow him to introduce himself, and along with Alex and Julia.
Hey folks, I've got this very sexy Barbra Streisand kind of microphone. I'm going to break into a song at any minute. No, I'm Steve. I look after fintech and regulated services for TikTok UK. I've been with TikTok around 18 months. It feels like about 18 years. But I'm probably one of the oldest people working at the company as well. So like if you guys have questions about trends, it's probably going to be hard for me to understand. I'll pass to the experts here to my left. But prior to TikTok, I was working at Amazon Advertising here in London. I ran the entertainment vertical there. And prior to that, I was at Facebook for 8 years in Australia, helping set up the business there from 2011 to 2019. So new to TikTok, not new to the industry, and really excited. Alex.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi everyone. I'm Alex. Thank you so much for coming. I know the weather is absolutely terrible. So to give a bit of context into who I am, I got in the influencer marketing industry around 2018. I worked for 2 leading agencies, so work with clients such as TikTok, Bumble, Deliveroo, Stars Play, H&M, Gorillas, the grocery delivery service. And then I moved client side where I was the influencer marketing manager for Share. So I was managing all influencer marketing activity globally. And since then, I've transitioned into starting out on my own now. Worked with international clients across multiple markets such as UK, Spain, Taiwan, Vietnam, Germany, Russia, all over the place. So yeah, excited to be here today. Julia, on to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Julia. I am the head of influencer marketing and creative strategist at Growth Gorilla. Good to see some faces that I already know over there. Happy International Women's Day to all of the ladies in fintech. Good to see you.
Bravo.
Before Growth Gorilla, I've been in influencer marketing ever since it was all green grass over there. Worked on loads of freelance campaigns. But before I joined the guys, I was in-house with a food company, doing all the marketing, influencer marketing and creative, and then decided to venture outside of that. And here we are.
Lovely, thank you. So I'll quickly go through the course of events or the agenda for today. We're going to kick off with talking about common misconceptions fintechs have about influencer marketing. Move on to authenticity for brands and creators, and then finish off with some platform-specific topics. We will take a sort of comfort break about 30 minutes in, chop up on drinks, popcorn, and other sugary goods. So, Julia, what are some of the common misconceptions fintech brands have about influencer marketing? How can they leverage different platforms and creator profiles to succeed?
You might have to break down those questions because my brain's going frazzled. But let's start with the misconceptions. I think the biggest one is that fintechs should work with influencers. It could be the case. It sometimes applies really well, but not necessarily. I think before I joined you guys, you also had that perception that, okay, we're going to work with some guys talking about financial services, investors on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever that is. But the reality is that most fintechs are selling a service that applies to everyday life, right? So you shouldn't necessarily be talking to financial experts in that sense. It could apply to lifestyle creators, travel creators, depends on obviously what the product is and what the service is. So yeah, is there a second part to that question?
Yeah, it's about how they can leverage different platforms.
It depends on your audience. Every time we're creating a campaign, we go, okay, who the audience is, what's the customer journey there, how do they interact? So if you're looking for awareness solely, I think TikTok's a great place to start. It's a place where people go and on the For You page, you see loads of different content tailored to you. I mean, what I see on my For You page, I see a lot of cats. I see a lot of astrology. I'm not too sure I am the target audience for most people. But there's a lot of people interested in how do you buy your first house? How do you apply for credit? What's the best travel card for me to use when I'm abroad? And you wouldn't necessarily follow influencers within that niche outside of TikTok, but because TikTok tailors things for you on your For You page, it suddenly then comes up. But unlike that, if you're looking for lengthier content with more expertise and explanation, YouTube is also a great place. Another great place for conversation. Twitter. People don't think about Twitter when it comes to influencer marketing, but it's out there for that as well. So I really think it depends on what the customer journey is and what the product is and what that audience is interacting with and looking for.
Lovely, thanks for that. So I just want to talk a little bit about UGC versus influencer. First and foremost, do you mind sort of explain the definition of UGC? And then from there, when's the best time to use UGC and when's the best time to use influencer?
In a nutshell, and it's kind of contradicting user-generated content. Now, is it user when you're paying for it? Because it's become a little bit about that. So the main difference between the two is that influencer content would be posted on influencers' channels. You're advertising through their channels. Look into it as almost if it was you're paying for TV time. UGC, however, you're buying that content straight. It doesn't necessarily need to go into the influencer's channel. You could have it both ways and then license that content however you want. But you're buying that content to use it either through paid or organic. And then it also depends on your contract you're licensing. But it's for your own use as opposed to the intent is not to reach the influencer's target audience. The intent is for you to have content that feels authentic and speaks directly to an audience that you can leverage off.
Lovely. Alex, with your kind of experience at shares and previous brands, what strategies have you used to push influencers for conversions? Mm-hmm. And then how do you measure ROI?
Yeah, great question. I think to just kind of go back to the question around the fintechs, and then I'll jump straight into this. So I think with fintechs, I definitely agree the misconception that everyone goes and works with influencers in the space. I think at Shares, when I was at Shares, the best performing content that we ever did was actually a comedy influence, like a group of comedy influencers on TikTok that we leveraged the content for paid advertising. But I think one of the important things that fintech brands need to ask themselves is, where in the customer journey are you actually hitting people? Is it kind of like at the top of the funnel, or is it at the bottom of the funnel? Because at the bottom of the funnel, sometimes working with those very specific niche fintech creators could work really, really well for you. I think going on to the UGC content bit, what we did is we used the content, we boosted it through Spark ads, and we targeted audiences in order to get conversions that way. And with influencer marketing, because the field is getting very, very saturated, using user-generated content is actually a great way to grab attention. So hiring an influencer that's a recognizable face, but not necessarily posting the content on their channels, but actually targeting audiences that match your target audience, and then pushing down to that bottom of the funnel beyond just the consideration phase. And that way, because one of the things is with influencer marketing now, a lot of people, especially if the content is not as entertaining, it's a bit more informative. With influencers, for example, you would rather push recognizable faces onto the audiences rather than post it on their channels. And the way that we track this is obviously when we're doing TikTok Spark ads, we're able to track it. When we're pushing it on through Snapchat ads, we're able to track it. When we're pushing it on Instagram, we're able to track it, and we're seeing what the favorite word, CAC, is on this content. And I think also that way, because influencer marketing is becoming extremely expensive, that's a great way to kind of also optimize budgets. So I think those are like a few points here to cover. But I do think that entertaining content, pushing it out on the influencer page for the brand awareness, like brand awareness phase, will always have a very large place that for every brand, really.
Can I just jump in on that?
Of course, yeah.
So I think it's super important as well when you're talking TikTok specific that the majority of people who use the app every day, they come there to be entertained. And when you look at some of the other platforms that are out there, you know, Facebook, Instagram, it does differentiate itself from being an entertainment platform rather than, you know, a social platform, a messaging platform, a place where your friends are. So I do think that it's quite important that you're playful with that content. Now, of course, if you're talking about a complicated product, like a first-time home buyer or an ISA or something like that, you will need to lean into some of the finfluencers. I can't even say that. I'm gonna have to say that all night. So you're gonna have to lean into the finfluencers to try and explain that in a kind of playful, joyful way. But it's really important that you kind of keep that. You know, you don't want to come across too heavy, and like our industry, respectfully, sometimes can be pretty dry, right? So it's really important that you keep it light, you keep it entertaining, you know, so it's sticky.
Yeah, just to add one thing, it's about like integrating the brand authentically in the influencer content and making it like informative but entertaining as well. And TikTok is evolving as a platform with long form, with a lot of things, so it's becoming more and more educational.
Yeah, and we don't have the answers. Like a lot of what, like we're figuring it out as we go as well, because TikTok as a platform is only about 4 years old, right? So, especially when it comes to it being a business. But who would have thought that Ryanair, you know, was going to be this hilarious profile, right? And like none of us predicted that, right? And you know, they just saw the values and the opportunity with the platform, and they just went for it. Obviously, a little more difficult when you're FCA regulated, and you have to be quite careful.
So, with that in mind, I mean, you know, what are the opportunities for fintechs out there? You know, can they be like a Ryanair? Obviously, yes, there's concerns about regulation, but is that a possibility?
Yeah, I genuinely do think, and what I'd say to folks is like, if they're worried about testing it, you should always try something small. Try with the organic team. You know, we've seen Monzo do a fantastic job at this organically. You know, there's other brands out there who are pushing this really hard. And you know, not they're not afraid to be playful on the platform. That can be very daunting when you're talking to risk and compliance folks, and like every big fintech is going to have to go through that journey with working with compliance and saying, okay, guys, like it's not going to be like the standard Facebook images that we use to sign off, and we could put all our T's and C's at the end. Everyone's going to have to work through that. But, just be creative. And if you have someone who has a natural talent for TikTok working in your business, and typically these are young people straight out of college, empower them, give them a phone, let them start making content. They don't have to publish it. Just kind of share it around the office and see how it goes. And you will be surprised. You honestly will be surprised.
And from the influencer marketing side of things, it's about including compliance from the beginning of the process, right? Yeah. Like you're approaching influencers, you get compliance from the beginning to kind of sign off concepts so you don't hit roadblocks on the way.
Yeah. And if something goes viral for the wrong reason,
you're
you're in trouble.
But it's a collaborative process as well, right? We were talking about this the other day. Like, you need to get influencers involved in the brief as soon as you can, so that when they come with those creative ideas, you can go like, great, but hold on a minute. What else can we do with this? And clients need to be involved as well. And I think it's not as straight line of a process where it's like, this is what we can say, this is what we cannot say, and that is it, and the influencer just has to deal with it. Obviously there's things that you just can't, but if there's a way to have the three involved and create a really beautiful piece of content, then I think that's the best way to go. And just on the note that you were talking about, that I thought it was kind of interesting that you said there's a time and place for finfluencers, which I completely agree. Especially when it comes to regulations, they are the ones that are usually very on board with it because they know what they're talking about. I think it's quite interesting as well to, especially the more specific products, to have a mixture of the two, because potentially the everyday person would be interested in that product, but they wouldn't come across it if it wasn't for your everyday influencer. However, once they get to it, they also need that further piece of information. So having a mixture of the two to really all come together in full circle, I think is really important.
I think one of the questions I want to ask here is then how do, we're talking a lot about TikTok, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on taking almost like a multi-channel approach to influencer marketing. I would say, Julia, we've obviously done some work here at Growth Gorilla. What's your approach and what are your thoughts around that?
As I was saying, it really depends on the audience and what the product is. I don't think every platform works for every brand. I wish it did. It doesn't. But equally, I also don't think just putting all of your cards in one platform might be the best strategy. One thing that I say sometimes is when brands want to work with really big influencers, I'm like, okay, let's do that. But look into their audience. Are they evenly spread across all platforms? Because often they'll have one really strong platform and then a few extra or two where they have their niche core audience. And that's the people that you want to target. So maybe get that YouTuber that has 3 million followers and work with them on TikTok instead, where they might have like a couple 100,000. Because that's the core of the audience, the people that are really going to engage with the content truthfully and not just there to watch a funny video. So in that sense, I think you can build really interesting campaigns for cheaper, if you will.
I would say, Alex, you're smiling and nodding
yeah,
there. So
I just want to add a point on that, on the large influencers. I think what brands need to do when they work with a large influencer, specifically on Instagram, also on TikTok, open the comments. Look at the branded video. When you work with a large name, normally the brand gets lost in the content and the comments are all about that person. So that person is so recognizable that their audience just does not care about what brand they're promoting. They just care about the content itself. So sometimes it's better to work with names that are less recognizable and putting your brand at the forefront in an authentic way than working with someone that is just going to completely drawn out the brand just because of their name recognition.
I talk about that all the time. Is the example I always give. I'm like, look into the comment section. I don't care how many comments. I care what they're talking about. If there's 3 comments talking about your product, asking questions, how great it is, much better than having 100 comments talking about the hair of the influencer.
Intent to buy, intent to download. That way you guys can actually track that, and you can track the sentiment. Think of it as a digital focus group, if you may. But yeah, that's an example, and I agree with everything that Julia said about the audience as well.
Here we have it.
End
Maybe
of
we
the
know
show.
what we're talking about.
So there we go.
I think we drop the mic there, Shamir. Yeah.
So I want to move on to talking about authenticity for brands and creators. And one of the terms that's been sort of thrown about quite a bit, or certainly the last couple of days for us, it has been talking about deinfluencing. So again, I'm going to hand this over to Julia. What is deinfluencing? And what are the common misconceptions and fears surrounding deinfluencing?
Over to you. No, I'm joking. We have this thing. Okay, so it's recent, so I wouldn't say there is a definition per se, but there is a trend going on that brands are a little scared about. I would say don't be. De-influencing is influencers right now are shifting from the space of just promoting things for the sake of and going like, this is an amazing product, go for it, it works for everyone. No, it doesn't. And that is the point, is getting into the grits of it and being like, this is a great product for these reasons. It might work for you. If this is what you do, it doesn't work for everyone. If this is you, this works for you. If that's you, then that works for you. It doesn't apply. It's not a mold that fits all. And what it really does mean in long term is that brands are going to have to start furthering those relationships with their creators and really looking into brand ambassadors as opposed to one-offs. I think this is a shift that's been happening for the past couple of years, but now it's really apparent with the current scenario, because like how influencer marketing came about when people stopped trusting celebrities to talk about products because it became very apparent that they were just being paid to do so. One day influencers became about the same thing, and now it's about what's really the intent out there, and it still works. People still trust influencers more than they trust branded's own content, because if you're talking about your own company, then you're a bit biased. But it's all about those really long-term partnerships and making sure that you are targeting the right audience and that the influencer is talking to that audience and not just being like, this is great for everybody. So in a nutshell, that's not really a nutshell. That's what it's about. Over to you, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we can look at de-influencing is kind of going all the way back to where influencer marketing started. So before there were payments for promotions on platforms, I can give an example. When I first started noticing influencer marketing, way before I got in the space, I think it was around like 2009. I was very into fitness YouTube. So I was watching a lot of fitness YouTubers, and the way that they would promote products was they would be sent over, let's say in 2012 where Gymshark started, they would be sent over a hoodie, and then they would do like a review of the hoodie or wear that hoodie on the videos. But if they don't like the hoodie or the supplement that they're promoting, they would actually say it, because they would be sent for free to review it on their videos. There wouldn't be a contract. There wouldn't be anything saying what they should and should not say. Now, obviously, with like a lot of payments and a lot of money on the line, that's become a different thing. With the influencing, it's all about authenticity and actually reviewing products and speaking about products in the most authentic way, which is only going to really, in the long term at least, help the industry rather than hinder it.
And I think long term as well, just to further develop a little bit on that, is when I talk about creating those relationships, I'm talking about genuinely interacting with your creators and making sure that they understand what your product is about, what your company mission is about, and that they feel like a part of it. The industry is shifting a little bit away from, hey, here's a brief, here's how much much I'm going to pay you. What are your rates? Create a video for me. We're going to approve it or not. These are the regulations. Put it out there. It's going to stay up for 6 months up to a year, and then I'll see you later. No, you need to have that close relationship with your creators if you want it to feel and lend as authentic, and they're going to feel that as well. And for your benefit, you're going to get a lot further in the relationship and the best content possible if you do that.
Yeah, another thing to kind of like add here, apologies, is another key term, co-creation, right? Example from the fintech industry. Me and Danny spoke about this yesterday. Revolut and the Sideman partnership. They launched the card, which gave discounts to every person that gets the card onto Sideman businesses, which is like Side Plus, Sides, their vodka brand, etc. So it gives discounts. That's co-creation. That's including influencers in your whole creative process, and you're kind of creating something that would be authentic to them.
So I'm going to sidestep a little bit. We've talked about using obviously influencers and getting them to obviously create content. But obviously with, I suppose, the influencer market getting somewhat expensive with a lot of money on the line, we're seeing brands starting to create in-house teams. And I suppose my question is, bearing in mind around the influencing and all the conversations, everything you've just spoken about, is that truly authentic content then? I'll say, Alex, I'll let you start and then we'll let Julie interrupt in a moment.
I will.
I mean, I think the answer is yes and no, right? Like that person becomes an employee in the company. So you would think of him as like him or her as a social media manager of sense that's creating content, that's an in-house content creator. I think the thing to be looked at here is like obviously speed of execution. You can roll out a lot of videos, test out a lot of things when you have an in-house content creator, but then you lack diversity of faces on like your channels and also when you're promoting it outwardly. So there's pros and cons. I don't think it's like it's not one or the other. It's both. Like if you have an in-house content creator, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do influencer marketing or you shouldn't do UGC content. It's just a landing can in order to roll out a lot more content at scale.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. I think.
Should I go?
Do you want to comment on it, Stephen?
No.
I think having the in-house creative team is really important because it gives a face to the brand creatively on socials, and I don't think that should be looked upon. But the influencer is still the trusted voice, right? I don't know how much audiences would trust someone from within the company when it comes to advice. It's great to see what the brand is about, what the mission is, how did they interact? Is it a funny company? Is it a serious one? How did they interact with their customers? That gives it personality, that attracts people to the brand. But I want to hear someone from outside, and this is the part where I think de-influencing is quite good because then it comes with intent. That's the opinion I'm going to trust, not the employee within the company.
I do have a slight side on it.
There you go.
And I know, stepping out of my comfort zone. So what I would say about in-house teams is that like some fintechs are, ultra lean, and as you were saying, Shamir, the cost of content creation is becoming a big problem for them, right? So it's often easier for them to actually bring people in-house and start making the content there. I totally get where everyone's coming from, but I think it's a mixture of both. Like if you have a big brand message to get across or a big campaign to drive users or downloads, then absolutely go down the influencer route and have a full funnel strategy there. But I think bringing people in-house as well is a good thing. It changes mindsets within companies and it allows them test and is very low risk for them because like they're an employee. So I definitely I'm a big advocate of teams who can bring things in-house, but also when it's time to go big and go large on the paid side, you should definitely be leaning into some of the influencers and content creators out there.
And that kind of leads me on to that point around going big. I think there's a better way to rephrase this. I think that brands look towards obviously creating content that's sexy and cool, that captures interest. But I think, Stephen, from your perspective, how do we balance that with driving real business growth?
Yeah, and it's something that we talk to our customers about every day, right? And they're kind of like, is there a secret sauce? Is there a perfect way to do this? And unfortunate answer for us is like, there's not. Like, you need to figure out on the way how you go. Now, what I would say is sometimes I find it difficult when I hear customers saying, how do we go viral? Like, how are we going to go viral on the platform? And it's like, okay, get a bucket, fill it with kittens, make a TikTok, it will go viral, it will do it. Like, how many Home Alones is that going to sell you? None. Zero. Right? So I think like you do need a balance of, being fun and playful on the platform, making it engaging with the content, with the content that people are natively looking at in the For You feeds, but also bring a real commercial lens to everything. And as Alex was saying about measurement, like really like hold these platforms to a high standard in terms of like, if especially if you're investing and going big, everything should be measured to like a CAC metric or, cost per install, something like that. And I would say it's a mixture of kind of art and science. Don't kill yourself on the analytics, because you can, like, particularly on TikTok, it's a new platform. We don't have the levels of machine learning optimization algorithms that like Facebook has been running for 18 years. Google has been running 25 years. So like you won't see the same scale of results. We're working extremely hard to get there, but also have the kind of left side of the brain and go, look at the comments, see how kind of how your audience are reacting to the content, and then measure everything, like, and test and iterate. And when it's time to go big, then you should have a good idea of what works. And lean on your TikTok team to help you.
Cool. So that point around brands coming up to you and saying how do we go viral? Whether it's kittens in a bucket or otherwise, it kind of makes me think. Well, the individual that's going to have the most knowledge about what content that's going to perform the best is going to be the creator. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on, in terms of kind of what you've seen at scale, when's the right time to kind of hand over control to the creator to create content? At what point should the brand be doing that? And I suppose, how much trust should a brand have in the creator that they're working with?
Yeah, it's a very common question. And usually how it starts is they would come to us and they'd say, we have no idea where to start. What should we do? And, there's a bunch of different ways we can kind of look into it. You can either hire an agency, you can do it in-house. We have specific starter packs as well, which is a product where we'll actually engage with the creators for you, and we'll give you some free content to get you started. And like that's a good way to kind of dip your toe in the water. But it is, Shamir, it is confronting for a lot of brands, like especially when I don't look after the high street retail banks, but another team at TikTok does. And like when you're talking to a Barclays or an NatWest about like, let go of your 100-year-old bank there. That's a very hard thing for them to do. But, when they do, we see the results happen. Another example recently that happened on the retail team was that, I don't know, have any of you seen the Tesco ad where they were going through the shopping? Do you know the noise the Tesco? I'm not going to do it because I'll make a fool of myself. But like when you
I'm not sure.
No, you'll have to take my word for it, Jameer. But when you scan your barcodes through there and the voice talking at you, and people did loads of duets of that, and they started using their own voice and like remixing it and things like that. And, you know, Tesco was never had that kind of content before, and it's, you know, changed the mindset of a lot of that team internally. So I think test and learn, find someone who's an advocate internally in your business, and yeah, just keep pushing. And I think you can always start on the organic side before you have to go, you know, on the paid side where things get a little more serious when there's like money behind it.
I think that kind of moves us on really nicely to kind of talking about platform specifics. And I think TikTok is, you know, it's a bit of a phenomenon really to a certain extent. You know, the growth over the last sort of 18 months has been tremendous. You know, what are the key differences between, I suppose, using TikTok for creators versus, say, other platforms, you know, for brands?
Enough to spend a lot of time at other platforms as well. And what I would say the biggest difference for me at TikTok is the creator thing is built into it natively from the start. When I was working at Instagram, to be honest, it was a bit of an afterthought, you know, like we never knew what creators were doing, or we would tell brands, oh, go talk to a creator and come back to us when you think about a strategy. And you know, TikTok, when I joined, it was like completely integrated. All the creators are integrated with, you know, our creator exchange program, which is, you know, effectively self-serve creators. You can go to the exchange, you can see all their results, you can see their rates, you can see how well they've done. And like all that is built in. Now, previously, when I've worked at other places, you know, we had no idea what a creator was charging a brand or what standard of content was there. The brand would come back to us and say, we got the content, we'd see it, we'd be like, okay, this isn't going to go well. Whereas TikTok has baked that in natively. You know, there's three main pillars to the TikTok UK business. There's the ads side of the business, there's the e-commerce side of the business, and then there's the creator hub. And there's roughly around 500 people in the UK just working on the creator side of the business. So they take it super, super seriously. So it's baked in from the start. So that's the main difference. Alex, as a client, what do you think?
I want to add something. I've actually worked with TikTok was actually one of my first clients back in 2019. So when they were like expanding and had just purchased Musical.ly. But I want to kind of like go back before that. So I guess most people here have heard about Vine.
I was going to say, are we going to talk about Vine?
Yes, we are.
You really went back.
Yeah, so Vine basically got defunct because a lot of their creators came to them and were like, we're creating this many videos on your platform. We're generating that many views. We're working with brands. We want to be paid $1 million a year to be exclusive on Vine. And Vine said, fuck no. And then basically the platform got defunct because all of the creators started moving on to YouTube. And one thing that TikTok did amazingly well with their expansion strategy and with the way that they've worked across multiple markets is build those build those creator relations, get and have amazing relations with their talent and the top creators and include them in the process from the beginning, as Steven said. So yeah, they learned from the mistakes from Vine, and they also saw the creator economy becoming a thing. I think Facebook, Meta, and YouTube kind of saw like the creator economy rise, but they weren't started with that idea. I think TikTok were started with that idea from the beginning. So that's the difference, really. So Vine.
R.I.P.
So many thoughts. Vine 2.0.
So, Julie, do you have any further thoughts on that? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I agree. There's not a lot to add to it. I think just from a creator perspective, and sometimes it's why you see rates going so high. And I'm not going to lie, when it comes to influencer rates, there's no regulation. It really is the Wild West out there. Some creators send me rates and I'm like, you're really undercharging yourself, but like, you go for it. That's good for us. And some others I'm like, who do you think you are? However, if the platform is giving them the tools to be able to monetize straight away, that really goes in the favor of the creator, of the platform, of the brand. So go TikTok.
So I think, not to pick on TikTok, but there's obviously, conversations that we've had with clients. There's been sort of concerns around, I suppose, targeting capability and scalability of TikTok versus platforms like Meta. But equally at the same time, I mean, you and I have spoken, and I have spoken with other brands, and they've done fantastically with TikTok. And it'd be great to kind of hear your perspective, Stephen, on kind of what are the ingredients that for the brands that have managed to unlock TikTok, and how have they managed to scale effectively, and almost like get over the concerns of I suppose the features that perhaps Meta doesn't have.
Yeah, I think there's two main things. It's when they understand the platform intimately, right? And don't see it as, oh, it's that sexy, cool place where kids do dances and that's all it's there for. And why would my fintech be there? They've done their research, they understand the numbers, and they understand the opportunity, and they take it seriously. And the second group of folks who have really figured it out, and I do believe this is probably the biggest challenge for TikTok in terms of scaling our business, is the people who have figured out the creative aspect of it. The fact of the matter is, our algorithm is an extremely hungry piece of software, and it wants more and more content all the time. It is very greedy. That is very hard for brands, especially smaller brands, to keep up with the need, because the algorithm will choose what it wants to look at, and if you're not posting constantly, it will find someone else who will, right? And I think it's really important that, if you're going to be serious on the platform, that you have a strategy where you kind of have a series of pipelines, and it kind of goes to the point I was talking earlier about having someone in-house. And, brands, one of our top brands is a B2B, and they have 10 people in-house building content for TikTok. It's in their contract that they have to create TikToks every week. Now that is a very extreme example, but they have taken it so seriously, and they're seeing the results, and they're getting good ROI from that. So they've lent into it, but not everyone can do that. But come up with a way where you are able to produce content at scale, so you can capitalize on and win.
Can I just say something on that note? Kind of goes a little bit further from that, but I think what you said about strategy goes into long-term strategy, especially when it comes to TikTok, because the one thing I find really fascinating about the platform is how things pick up months later. And next thing you know, something really... So when you're talking about the buck of kittens and creating viral content, sometimes it's really about thinking of the strategy in advance and not going okay, what can I create that's going to go insane right now? No, think about the strategy as a whole and what you really want to put out there, because if it does make sense, the chances are it will pick up.
I think one interesting thing that we see sometimes is brands will ask us, oh, should we just jump on the latest trends? And but the unfortunate nature of our industry is there's a lot to sign off, and by the time they push it live, it's a very awkward moment where you're the dad at the party. You're have you heard this joke? And it's whoa, cringe. So it's very hard to keep up with that. So as long as you have teams in house, you can be agile. But there is no silver bullet to it. There really isn't, and it's a journey that is super exciting for us as a team, that we get to work with some of the biggest fintechs in the UK and find out what works together. And what worked last week mightn't work next week, but like that's also part of the fun.
Cool. Can you use influencer marketing for B2B?
Short answer is yes, you can. Is it a bit more complex?
Yeah, sure. It is. I think like with B2B, you would have to think of it on a few levels, right? Like you can actually leverage LinkedIn influencers as well. There's a lot of top voices that you can work with to promote your brand. As well as that, obviously, podcast is a big thing. You can actually target a lot of people in corporate that are stakeholders through podcasts if you're in financial services. So I think there's definitely ways to do that. Obviously, you can also do it on TikTok and on Instagram. You just need to be creative with it and work with top creators on there. I know, for example, like people work with the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett all the time to promote different brands on there. A lot of fintechs are being promoted on there, as well as that speaking engagements, etc. So even doing a panel with a LinkedIn top voice is a way of leveraging influencer marketing on a B2B level. I
was going to say that influencer marketing doesn't necessarily stay within social channels. There's so much that you can do with the events and all sorts. B2B is a bit more complex, but one, it depends on the size. If we're talking about big companies, small companies might be a bit easier. You get entrepreneur influencers out there all the time, and it's quite easy to target those. If not, however, events like this work really well as well. If you put some influencers to talk about things and get some brands on board, then there you go. Are we doing that right now?
Very meta, isn't it?
It went full circle.
It's like, yeah. So
it's almost like she strategized it.
When you look at the platform, the mega platforms, and when they get to a critical mass of like half the population of a country, you can effectively say like that the businesses are there. It's just hard to find them. So I think like TikTok's 28 million MAUs in the UK. We know that the businesses are there. We know that they're setting up TikTok shops, right? It's like how can we make a better job of pushing that forward so our customers can find those people more effectively.
Amazing. And so we've covered sort of B2C and B2B, and I think we've talked a lot about TikTok, obviously, but I do want to touch upon other channels for influencer. Alex, you mentioned podcasting. We talked very briefly about YouTube. But it's sort of a two-part question. Yeah. One is, outside of TikTok, how can we be leveraging other platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And then part two, that question would be, outside of social media platforms, what can brands be doing? Particularly fintechs. So, Alex, if you get started, Julie can pick up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I think like with the different platforms, I'm actually, to be completely honest with you guys, I'm not a firm believer of Twitter. I think like the engagement on Twitter is quite low. I think the platform is developing more and more lately, but I think it's still not there yet. I think on a B2B level, it could be leveraged quite well. On a B2C level, it's a bit more difficult. I think YouTube can definitely be leveraged really, really well. I think it works in terms of conversions. Actually, YouTube works amazingly with adding like things in the description, using promo codes, etc. For affiliates, it works really, really well to drive conversions as well. It's just whether you integrate. Obviously, with YouTube, there's a dedicated integrated video. A dedicated video, you would be paying for the whole video to be around your brand. And integrated is going to be normally a 90-second slot, which is either in the beginning, the middle, or the end of the video. And that works really, really well for brands if you're able to hook well and then drive people to conversions. I also like Twitch. I like Twitch because what Twitch has is undivided attention, right? You're watching a video live. So you might have 1,000 people watching, but those 1,000 people are engaged. So I think fintechs, especially fintechs that are B2C, B2B, like we're completely excluding here. B2C fintechs have an amazing opportunity here to engage with an audience, because a lot of the audience there is, there's a lot of people that are into gaming. So if you're Revolut, for example, you can really engage with people there and do a competition. Like you can do different drops, like specific items, offers, only for the watchers of that stream. You can pin a comment if you're the creator on like a link on the comments, and then you just drive people through. You can have like those breaks in a competition. You can even sponsor an esports tournament. There's a lot of things that you can do as a brand on Twitch. You could do like a watch party. Yeah, a lot of things, and you can promote your offers on there, and then you leverage other platforms to promote it. Promote it on their Instagram. I'm popping live on Twitch at this time. Boom, you're driving them through on there. So I think Twitch is something that a lot of brands haven't explored, but because it's undivided attention, it's not tapping on an Instagram story and then you're just skipping. You're actually watching because you want to watch. It's like watching a sport, right? If you're watching esports. So firm believer of that. YouTube, great for conversions. Instagram still has a place pushing reels and video format quite strongly. And also what we were talking about, experiential, doing events with influencers, doing panels with influencers, and then not only like doing it in the real world, but also doing it digitally and finding ways to get it online, to get it posted, to get a hashtag going, to kind of like spread the word. So yeah, and live streaming.
One, I agree. Just a touch on Twitter. I think Twitter is more about getting the conversation going than anything else. And then equally, I think you need to look into different markets and how different markets use different social channels. I think the way we use certain channels in the UK is very different than the way that they use it in Nigeria or in Brazil. We were strategizing a campaign not that long ago for the Nigeria market, and Telegram came about into the conversation because it's one, they use it a lot, and two, such a great way to get people to genuinely conversate. And unlike WhatsApp, Telegram has these crazy features where the creator can put stuff out there and they can choose to get the audience to interact back or not. This whole thing is honestly a wild west out there. But I think it's such an interesting platform because it's conversational more than anything else, but it could so be used for so many things, and especially full circle campaigns.
So yeah, I just want to add something here. Telegram and Discord, both. Because I wouldn't say like, I did not mention them because I don't consider them really influencer marketing. It's more community-based marketing. So you can work with actually, I was speaking with an influencer today that has 800 followers on his Telegram and 900 on Discord, and we're going to use him as an affiliate for one of the clients that I'm working with. And I think that's a great way to start a conversation, but then you have to be more authentic than ever. I think like Reddit can be included in there as well. Like, do you guys know you can run ads on Reddit? It's wild. So there's a lot of opportunity there with those platforms as well, but it's just about being as authentic as possible, because if you do that, you work with a creator that has a Telegram group or has a Discord, and you promote your product, your app inauthentically, it's really bad for the creator and for the brand.
But I think when it comes to influencer marketing, you have the funnel measurements, right? You have the awareness, you have the nurturing, and you have the conversions. And I think those platforms really help with the nurturing part. As you said, it's about community building, which at the end of the day is the core aspect of influencer marketing. So I agree.
Yeah, I would even say that Discord and Telegram are actually more on the conversion phase. I would put them like really low down the funnel, like towards conversions, because you can really push your brand if you do it correctly to drive conversions through there. Yeah, absolutely.
We talked a lot about platforms, and we've talked a lot about audiences. And Sim kind of touched upon it in terms of types of content. I'd like to grab your thoughts, and we'll start with Julia. But how does content differ platform to platform? Firstly, and then second of all, I suppose when we think of influencer marketing, we think of a short vertical video of someone talking about a particular product, but there's lots of different forms of content that can be produced. So it'd be great, Julia, if you can share your thoughts on that and then kind of work our way up through the panel.
Okay. I think there's the basics of it where obviously every platform has different formats. A few are more conversational, or even platforms that have video type content. YouTube's you get YouTube Shorts, but in its essence, longer format video content, whereas TikTok is quite quick and witty. And then you could argue that Instagram has Reels, which very much similar to TikTok, but I think the platforms in itself are fairly different. People compare TikTok and Instagram at all times, and Stephen, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think actually TikTok compares more to YouTube in the sense that you're there for entertainment. On Instagram, I go on Instagram a lot more than I go on TikTok in terms of how many times I access over the day, because I want to check what my friends are doing on stories. I want to see what's happening on my feed. I want to check DMs. People are talking to me all the time. I'm constantly like, Instagram, I need to double check that. I have notifications for this gossip page. It just tells me all the stuff about my favorite reality show. But TikTok, I have TikTok hour. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, where I just dedicate my hour to TikTok, both for the job that I do, but also for my own entertainment, because I do need to see my cats and my astrology bits. And I just get consumed by it. And is it really fair to do the same content for TikTok that you would do for Reels, considering the attention is very different, because people repurpose that content all the time? Sometimes it works, and it works on the cheaper as well. If you're looking into building a campaign, getting an influencer to create a single piece of content that you can display on both, it will be cheaper. But will it work the same?
I mean, you've kind of set this one off for me. Thank you. But when we were talking about the B2B advertiser earlier, right? They buy across all channels, so they're like very sophisticated, and it would have been so much more cost effective for them as a business to just repurpose what they were doing on Reels and making it work on TikTok. The fact of the matter is that content won't perform as well if it's not native. And that's that's another challenge for our customers. It's like, okay, you want things that are special. But we see it in the results every day. So it is hard. There is no magic formula. There was a time where you saw a lot of TikTok watermarked content being on Reels, because they recognized that worked really well. Like when I was working at Instagram, that was an issue. They were trying to stop people doing that. But if it's not natively TikTok, the audience sees it straight away, and the algorithm picks it up next, and then content will quickly decline.
So I'm going to be hated a little bit here, but I actually disagree. So I was watching a podcast with Mr. Beast, and basically the point of the podcast is that this is the first time in social media history that you can create a piece of content that can go viral on 3 platforms at the same time, with YouTube Shorts, with Reels, with Instagram. And that's the top creator in the world, number 1 creator, right? Like he was going to sell his, they offered him $1 billion to sell his YouTube channel. So I believe that obviously there's differences between platforms. There's differences in audiences on each platform. There are different use cases. I agree with what Julia said around Instagram. I'm on Instagram way more than I am on TikTok because I'm chatting with friends. I'm doing all kinds of things on there. But I do believe that there's certain secret sauce and trends and hooks that brands can play around with in the first 3 seconds of the video that are going to make the video work across all the 3 platforms. Maybe it will work better on TikTok than it would on Instagram, than it would on YouTube, but the performance will be good across all 3 platforms. And what Steven said around the watermarks, at the time in 2019, when I worked with TikTok, that was part of their strategy to flood Instagram with content on Instagram stories and drive traffic for people to jump out of the platform and join TikTok and scale up the age of the audience on TikTok. And they've done really well. So yeah, I agree and disagree at the same time.
I'd be really surprised if that's true, but you were there before I was.
Oops.
So one last question before I hand over to the audience for any of their questions. What's and to all of you, what's one piece of advice that you would give fintechs around influencer marketing and how to make the biggest impact?
Try it. I think you got to start from somewhere, and I think we often talk about testing on paid, but people just think that like, oh, find me the perfect influencer and the perfect piece of content, and we'll get it out there, and we'll spend a lot of money on it if that's going to get us there. I'm like, no, maybe we should try a couple things and see how your audience reacts to it. And sometimes an influencer is great in theory, has the right audience, but you don't know how they're going to react to a certain product until you put it in front of them. You got to try it. If your budget is tight, try it across different niche influencers of smaller size, or as I spoke before, get into the bulk of the big influencers through their smaller channels, but really test a couple of things, a couple of different formats before you really put big bucks into just one thing. Because if you haven't done it already, then you need to test the audience first.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that to a sense. I think like if you have a small budget, you're better off sticking with micro niches and then focusing on them and see how they convert. If you have bigger budgets, what I would advise is you pick 3 or 4 verticals, you get a few influencers on each vertical, stick a budget, and then you're able to A/B test to see which vertical is working better for conversions, which one is working better for for brand awareness, etc. And then you understand what the appetite of the audience is for your brand, and like how the lifts and spikes in performance are happening. But it's also like work with people that understand the field and can kind of give you advice and navigate it. But I don't think the best way is to hire experts and then be like, you do it, but actually think about what they're doing and how they're building up the process.
Yeah, I would echo what the guys are saying. I think it's really important that you just get started and test. The barrier to entry is really low. And specifically when it comes to like emerging platforms, and I would class ourselves still as emerging as a business, it's really early days, and there's still opportunity for people to outcompete the mega brands. Like it's really surprising that we see companies who have the crazy budgets, but we also have these small companies who can compete in the same auctions and deliver better results just purely because their creative is better. And it's a difficult thing to explain to the big brand after spending a lot of money. But, these emerging platforms are really competitive, and there's opportunity for people to be great.
Did you guys see the Cat VR? There was this brand somewhere in America, selling TVs or something like that. And the post was of this AR cat bouncing in front of the store, and the overlay text. I
saw that the other day. I was like, what is that about?
The overlay text is please like and comment on these videos because I told my job that I told my boss that I'm a social media marketing expert. It went viral, a random business in Ohio or somewhere going absolutely viral. The post went on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram, all across, millions of views and millions of comments. That's to just add to the point of entry.
People sympathize.
And on that bombshell, thank you very much to our guest today.
Thank you, Shamir.
I'll hand over to you guys over here. Do you have any questions at all for the guest today? Go for it.
Thanks, guys. It was really good panel. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. So you mentioned Telegram is very popular in Nigeria. I suppose markets such as India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Kenya, South Africa, countries like that, sort of emerging markets. What platforms sort of work best over there.
Could you repeat the markets again? Sorry.
Yeah, like Southeast Asia, India,
Yeah.
Kenya,
Okay.
for example, Middle East.
Okay. So in Southeast Asia, I've run campaigns in Vietnam and Taiwan and like around the region as well. TikTok works really, really well. Obviously, like live streaming works really well in those markets as well. It's absolutely huge. And obviously, they have like different variations of super apps that you can also utilize on there and promote it there. So I think it's a totally different consumer behavior than the West is. So it just like they actually prefer to be sold very directly, unlike the West where we kind of want to make it like quite inconspicuous. They like direct marketing. So yeah, but TikTok is huge in those markets. And also with Telegram and Discord, because we did mention those, they're normally channels that are huge around two categories. So crypto and gaming. That's where they're like the largest by far in terms of like communication channels. And yeah, with India, I think like it's kind of similar. It's like TikTok is huge.
They are the biggest users of Instagram, I think. I could be entirely wrong, but I saw that.
No,
like,
you're right.
YouTube in India, monster. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for tonight. Opened our eyes, I think. Can you give me an example of like a fintech you've worked with that is not like a Monzo Revolut, but actually is grown up, heavily regulated? I work for a pension company, so I have some regulations to deal with. So have you worked with, can you give me an example of a company you work with and how did you overcome that massive kind of like a layer of FCA, financial promotion regulations, etc.?
Do you want to go for it? I feel like you were about to say something.
Oh, you can go.
Shamir, I feel like that's more of a question for you because you go for it.
You don't have to mention the name exactly, but maybe just like an example of how you did overcome that, because that's the challenge we've got at PensionBee, for example.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, there's a couple that I can think of, but they all kind of share that DNA of having to, first and foremost, convince the compliance department that they want to test this out and it's a viable channel and, you know, it's going to drive, you know, revenue, users, whatever it may be. And ultimately, the process is pretty similar for all. It kind of goes back to the point that Julia made earlier on, which was about bringing the creator in as upfront and early as possible, and then from there, being really so you know, getting them to have a conversation between the agency, the creator, the marketing team, and compliance, and being really clear about what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't do. And then using that as a baseline to then begin creating content. So I always liken it to, you know, the conversation I have with compliance is we're very, very clear on what we can and can't do for a static ad. And you know, get that conversation out of the way. Then I'll move them on to, if we were going to create a video ad for you, the way that we would manage that is that we would storyboard it, we would get the script together, we'd put that all together and we'll send it across to you and you would sign it off. Is that okay? Yeah, great. And then when I talk to them about creators, and I say, well, actually it's not too dissimilar from a video ad. We can speak to the creator, we can get their ideas now that they've spoken to you and they've got an idea of what they can and can't do and shouldn't do. We can then start to sketch out those ideas and put them in front of you. And then we can then surface that to compliance as early as possible and get them to give their sign off pretty much at that stage. We're effectively storyboarding to a degree what the creators are doing. And then being clear around the guidelines of any risk warnings, regulations, anything they should and shouldn't say. So by taking them through that process, and to be fair, we're almost, hand-holding compliance through this new process, at the same time of hand-holding the creator through it as well, that by the time we produce that piece of content, they should be signing it off. There's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't. Maybe there's a minor tweak here or add this risk warning. It's always, I'd make the risk warning bigger, bring it up front or whatever it is. Yep. And then I think the other consideration is a piece of content has been produced and all of a sudden now compliance have looked at it and gone, oh shit, that shouldn't be on there anymore. Well, hold on a second. If you've gone through a quality process up front and we've adhered to the fact FCA regulations that financial promotion should be clear, fair, and not misleading. If we've done that up front, then there's absolutely no reason why the compliance team should turn around and go, we need to take that piece of content down. But I'll hand over to Julia.
Just to add, I think it's like what was said around like holding the hand of like compliance and the creator from the beginning. But I think like even obviously like you have everything in writing. When you have those approvals, you have them in writing, so you can always go back to them. It's creating the brief, getting the brief signed off, getting the script signed off. But with the script, I would say like go like as bold as possible with the script and then have it to cut it down instead of like going safe with it and then like making it boring in a way. Like work with the creator closely of like create something that feels authentic to you and we'll run it by compliance. And then it's like speaking with compliance around like what the objectives of that script really are. And then them cutting the points, like trimming the fat of like what is FinProm, what can be said, etc. And then like once that's sold, obviously it's a back and forth process of selling it. Also, it's probably putting the creator's name forward and being like, this creator is like this type of creator. This is his audience. So they need approval of that to make sure that he's like reliable, etc. But it's like going bold and then having to trim it down so the content doesn't come out looking like, excuse my French, like shit.
And just on the platform side, like if it is particularly like a platform issue and you have a team working with you, get them involved. You know, don't be shy about asking us for help. And, you know, I'm more than happy to stand in front of a compliance person and explain our platform and them hating me, right? I have a very thick skin over the years from doing that. But get us involved early in the process because, you know, we can probably do a lot of the legwork for you or deflect some of the tension that might be coming from, oh, you know, this platform is a risky place for us. You know, I only see worst case scenarios, and I think we can go on that journey together.
I think it's about a collaborative process. From the brand's perspective, if you have a team in-house or if you work with an agency and the creator as well as the platforms, not selling my bread here, but for example, if you have a creative strategist of sorts, either at an agency or in-house, that person will then be working with the creator closely with the brand's best interest in mind. So they know what the brand wants to see and portray, but equally the creator knows the audience. Get the two to work together from the beginning. And don't forget, there's a brief there. There's a very clear brief that needs to be followed based on those conversations.
Hello. So I think a few key things I just want to point out of what I've heard tonight is it's very important for a brand to be upfront with the creator with the brief. And that's what I've learned with the brand that I work for right now. We've only scaled in the past 6 months from the paid performance. So my question is, when it comes to influencer marketing, should there be a defined strategy between organic and paid or collaboratively working together from a brand point of view?
I'll combine both. Like, my opinion is like influencer marketing is getting at a space where it's getting merged with like the entire growth marketing spectrum, right? So it's like utilizing the content for paid in order to drive conversions. Because initially, when influencer marketing became a thing and brands were working with influencers, it was all like, oh, brand awareness, oh, authenticity, oh, positive sentiment, etc. Like, there's a lot of value of using the content for paid advertising. Like right now, for example, with one of the clients that I'm working with, what I'm doing is I'm writing different hooks for a video. So it's the same version of the video. Just the first 3 seconds are different with a different hook that can be used for paid advertising and seeing what the differences are in conversions. So I would say definitely leveraging, like have a strategy that's influencer marketing, but it's also used for paid, not just organic. And that will kind of have like the biggest bang for your buck.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your Fintechs growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.